you standing up?
Yeah, I might as well. I see enough.
All right, there you go.
All right, we are streaming.
Just a second. All right, so if you want to stand.
I'll probably be right here, so I'll be out of the way of the projector as much as possible.
Okay. Kind of gives something, and then go ahead.
All right, we almost there.
I think we are live.
All right, guys, welcome to another Friday Tech Talk. This week's special guest is Mr. Nick Luallin from IT Motives. He is a recruiter from IT Motives, obviously, but he'll be here to give us an awesome talk and answer any questions that you guys may have at the end. All right, let's welcome Mr. Nick.
All right, sorry here, guys. I hit the wrong button, but that shouldn't be too much of a problem. So I'll pull up my slides here in relatively quick order.
So,
why the heck not? All right, thank you, everyone. Appreciate your attention thus far, even though I've been staring at the computer screen for the most part. I'm a recruiter. That's my title, technical recruiter. I've been recruiting in Portland for a little over 3 years. First 2 years, I started with a big box company. Last 2 years, been with IT Motives, where I work now. I've got cards here. Happy to connect with you guys afterwards. My Twitter handle, email there. I can make these slides available. They're all pretty similar to the ones I did for the Ruby on Rails talk, where I met Brandon, which is why I'm here today. But this is an exploration for why you don't want to just rely on applying online and going through what have become standard methods for finding a job. So it's an exploration against the automation of the recruiting process, which would just be online. But at the same time, want to make sure to make it apparent to you guys the best source that you're going to have for finding new jobs. Your first job out of graduation here is going to be through networking, people you meet in meetups, people that you've been working with here, other folks that you know in the community. Recruiters are great, but number one is networking. That's where you're going to find your best opportunities, the positions that you enjoy the most. Although you can find some really good opportunities through recruiters just the same, finding positions through people you work with is the best way to go. So that I titled this, How I Learned that Recruiters Are People, just to kind of focus on, all right, this is what it's like to be a recruiter. This is what I do in my daily life. This is what I look for. This is what other people that recruit, what they're looking for. And also, caveat, I've only been an external recruiter. So there's a difference between internal and external recruiters. I'll talk with you a little bit about who I am, hopefully brief, more about recruiters in general, tips that I'd give, and Q&A is listed at the bottom, but I'm happy to answer questions at all times during my talk. I would much rather focus on your questions specifically than give you death by PowerPoint. Nobody likes that. But some additional words of caution and disclaimers. I don't have the answer to everything. I feel like I know a lot, but I'm always learning things about new technologies, about recruiting, about working with people, about different companies. Hope that it'll give you some good insight, and so you understand more of what a recruiter's like, how you can use us, and also help just during the job search in general. Happy to answer questions like that. So your questions are going to be more valuable than me just reading off of a slide. Just to belabor that point. So me, I'm not a graphic designer. This is not going to look pretty. I'll pull out some funny images every now and again, but it's more about the meat of the conversation. I'm Portland born and raised. You don't see that a lot anymore, I feel. I took a few courses of Java in college, was thinking of adding the computer science degree behind my econ degree. That didn't pan out. I didn't want to stay in college for 6 to 7 years, but I do understand programming a little bit more than I think your average recruiter does. I don't need to read everything to you here. You don't get formal recruiting education either. I kind of fell into recruiting. I've always had a passion for technology. The condensed career history for me, worked for a nonprofit after-school program, worked at Nordstrom for 13 and a half months. Then I got a job in IT sales. I worked with the value-added resellers, so doing virtualization projects, data center upgrades, things like that. And then it's like, I see this as a shrinking market, and recruiting seemed like a really good blend of my skills, my understanding of technology, my passion for people. So I fell into that position through networking. Every job that I've gotten after I graduated college was through somebody I know or through a tip from somebody that I knew. And again, I kind of mentioned the first 2 years of my experience was with a big box recruiting company, so global presence, really large organization, and now I work for a really small company. So I have those two perspectives to draw from in terms of my experience, but again, I've never been an internal recruiter. Any questions so far?
By internal recruiter, you mean those for one specific company doing?
Yes, yeah,
roles for that
a
specific-
dedicated internal recruiter.
Got it. And external is agency.
Yes, external recruiter is agency, so yeah, thank you for helping me clarify that point. You're just going to be working on a lot of different kinds of roles as an internal recruiter often. Sometimes you're focused specifically in technical recruiting, like folks that recruit for CDK Global, for instance. They focus on technical recruiting internally, but every now and again they will still use external agencies if they have a lot of difficulty filling a position. So you got to apply online. You're going to find positions online. You're going to find a lot of things out there, but if you hear that called the black hole of death, so you can't let that be your only way for searching for positions. You got to diversify how you're going to source positions for yourself. So, you don't have to deal with an agency recruiter if you apply online. That can be great sometimes because there are people out there that do make a bad name for what we do. But part of the problem with that is that you have a 90% attrition rate for recruiters. So within the first year, you expect 9 out of 10 people not to be in the job at the end of the year. So that puts a lot of new people necessarily into recruiting. So you're going to interface with a lot of people who haven't been doing it very long and who aren't technical. Not only is there no degree path for a recruiter, but the only training you get is on the job. And people start making calls very early on as a recruiter. You can eliminate the middle person by just applying online, but at the same time, I'm going to argue that we add value as recruiters, and we can help you. You just have to know how to work with us and what our own constraints are, what we're held to, what our expectations are, so that we keep our jobs. I mentioned the black hole, and I'm not going to read directly off these slides. I know you guys can do that. Again, the more questions you guys can ask me is going to be much better. So if you see anything that you're curious about on a slide, or I say something that doesn't come across clearly, yes, question.
Can you say more about the
Unintended discrimination. So when there are any number of things you can put on a resume that might not look the best to somebody who is an internal recruiter who's scanning resumes. You might misspell something. There have been studies that have shown that if you change your name to one that's more standard, white name over somebody from minority, there have been studies that have shown that that's treated differently throughout the interview process. So when you're working with a recruiter directly, with a person directly, they get to understand who you are, what your strengths are, and a resume really is just a medium for getting an interview. So when you're working with somebody as a recruiter, we're talking directly to hiring managers. So, we can do our best to make sure that your strengths are communicated clearly beyond what is just shown on a piece of paper or a digital resume. But there are just, lots of ways, applying online, you might not be seen the same way as if you're actually talking to somebody who hears what your strengths are. And, resumes, you're going to have a lot of different versions of your resume. Some are going to speak better for different positions. So there's a lot that I could expand upon with that, but that was more of just kind of like a catch-all for all the different things that you can fall victim to if you're only applying online. And comp info, that's compensation info. If you're just applying online, a lot of the times the forums will be like, all right, tell us what you want for money. It's like, well, I don't know what the salary range is. I don't know if I'm inside that. I don't know if I'm just below, just above. So it's really hard just working with online postings because you don't always know what the compensation is unless you're applying for a state role where they have very well defined salary ranges, or government in general. So recruiters in general, we want to help you. It's what we're paid to do. It's what we're incentivized to do. For the most part, the models that we get, a base salary, sometimes relatively low, and commission plans. So if we get people placed in positions, we get commission from that. The fee in different companies will have bonuses and trips that you can win. If you make certain thresholds in terms of compensation, I don't have a trip to the Bahamas or anything I can win in my current role, but there were, it's like the circle of excellence with my last company. If you're in the very top tier, there's an all expense paid trips. There are a lot of incentives to get as many people into jobs as possible. And at one point, I was expected to make 300 phone calls in a week, in addition to all of the other goals that I'm supposed to hit. So in bigger box companies, there's a huge push on making lots of calls, sending lots of emails, and when you're working with that kind of high volume, and you can't have quantity and quality at the same time. So I'm very happy to have moved on from a position where I don't have to make calls like that, but people that are in those roles that do have expectations like what I faced, the quality goes down because of the quantity that they're expected to put out. So trying to humanize the experience of a recruiter for you guys. But when it comes to direct hire placements that we make, fees that we'll charge in the Portland area, I've seen as little as companies that would charge 10% of a person's salary. So say a person's making $100,000, that recruiter is going to get $10,000 if they place someone. And that's usually like single people that work from home at their computer, run their own company. They charge less money than average, so that they have more. But it's more easy for them to get business. All the way to the point where there are recruiters that have charged 35% of a person's salary, not from a person's salary. If you guys don't understand that, I can certainly go over that in more detail. But for more niche roles, recruiters can make a lot of money placing people. I worked with people who placed somebody for $160,000 salary at a 30% fee. And they got, the salesperson and the recruiter got 17% of that fee. So I'm not going to do the math for you, but that's a lot of money for one person helping them get a job. And then, the VIG, as you might call it, the commission that we earn can vary wildly in terms of the percentage of the fee that we take on. If you're just a commission-based recruiter, that can be around 50% of the fee is paid to the recruiter before taxes, of course. And then there are other bonuses that can be thrown out. I was like, oh, it's a new company. We're starting with a new company. There can be a lot of effort. So maybe a place the recruiting agency hasn't placed anyone yet. They really want to get in there because it's easier to place more people when you've placed at least one, at least recently. There might be an additional bonus. So if there's a company that's harder to place people with because it's not as good of a place, a recruiter might be incentivized to work harder. And then, the warm glow effect in general, though, what it really comes down to is you'll find recruiters that you do trust, that you do believe in, that believe in you, and they value placing somebody in a new position. Like, every recruiter starts with that. Day one as a recruiter, all right, I'm going to get new people into work. Weeks go on, 300 phone calls every week, gets to be grueling, long hours. And it's more about, all right, I got to hit my metrics. I've got to make enough phone calls, send out enough resumes so I keep my job. But I also want to make money. But it becomes more focused on keeping your job than what some of the initial allure is of coming to recruiting, and that's getting people work. So there's like kind of the two polar things pulling on somebody. It's, all right, I'm going to help somebody get a job, and I'm going to make a lot of money. Because you can make a lot of money. There are people that make 7 figures recruiting. It can happen. I'm not there. And then with regards to the feedback loop, one thing I didn't expand at all on here, working with a recruiter, you should expect them. If you're working with an external recruiter, you should expect them to get back to you. If, say, you talk about a position on a Monday, they're going to send your resume out. If you haven't heard from them by Friday, reach back out to them. They owe you a response. If they might be busy, something else might come up. There can be reasons in general, but they should get back to you. And if they don't, work with another recruiter. There are so many recruiting companies out there. And you want to find somebody who's got integrity, who is getting back to you, somebody who's professional, somebody that you believe in, that you believe is telling you the truth and is going to serve your best interests. Any questions about kind of the nuances of recruiting and how we're paid, anything like that didn't come across clearly? Yes?
You're talking about contact back. That's been one of the key things that I've seen. I work in job placement, and that's been one of the major issues with recruiters is that they just do not get back to students when they're trying that's my bias in coming into this. That recruiters are not offering great service sometimes. So
That's
I'm open to somebody showing something different.
Sure, and that's continually one of the biggest complaints. And the first company that I worked with, Modus, subsidiary of Adecco, that's where I started recruiting. Every year they do surveys of all the people in their database that they have been contacted recently to see how their service has been, what complaints they might have. Year after year, that was an issue. Is you got to get back to people, and certainly there can be so much come across a recruiter's desk, so many different ways that they're pulled that they might have to jump on a grenade, so to speak. If they place somebody and they back out last minute, that's going to be a priority for them to focus on. They might not get to an email by the end of the day. You want to avoid that at all costs. It does happen, but if you try multiple avenues to get back to contact someone and they don't, that's a display of a recruiter that's not showing you the integrity that you deserve.
It seems like, in general, recruiters are going to be more motivated to place like senior developers rather than junior developers because they're not going to get paid as much from junior developers.
Sure, and that's an additional dynamic is we can only work on the positions with a company that they give us permission to. I mean, if they're not going to review a resume and seriously consider a candidate, there's also no incentive for us to work on those positions. So there is the straight dollar incentive to place people in positions that offer more money. There is an incentive to do that. There's also a big challenge with reaching out to and finding people who are mid and senior level that are open to considering new positions. So it's very hard, so it takes a lot of effort to find those people as well. Now, when it comes to more of the entry and junior level, they're people graduating from coding schools, from college, applying on their own in great numbers. So the companies we work with will have good resume flow for the most part for entry level and junior positions, so they won't ask us to help on those. There are certainly every now and again exceptions to that, but it's very unlikely that I would place most of you in your first position. Very unlikely. In 3 years of recruiting, I've placed 3 entry to junior level software engineers, so about 1 a year for me. You had a question, Brandon?
But getting our second job.
Yeah, but getting your second job, moving on from that. So, as you're in the 1 to 2 year of experience range, there's a lot more that we can do to help. Like if you get some good projects, good internships under your belt, where it's right around that 1 year, closer to 2 years is generally where we have more success. But if I get a position where they're asking with somebody for around 3 years of experience, and I see someone who's got 1 to 2 years of experience that I'm really confident in, I'm like, let's give it a shot. Let's get you in front of this person. Let's get you in front of this hiring manager. If they've got a coding challenge for you to do after a brief hi, how are you, who are you as a person kind of a conversation, let's give it a shot. I've had a lot more success in that regard, whereas with regards to kind of bending the requirements of a position. It's very rare you're going to find somebody for a position that's 100% fit. It's got everything that a company is looking for. It's about us developing relationships more on the account manager side. Since I'm a recruiter, I focus mostly with software engineers, QA engineers, DevOps engineers, people of that sort, whereas the hiring manager conversations, CEO, CFO, those kinds of conversations generally happen with my CEO or account managers. So we'll be in conversations as well, learning about the position from those people, what it is they're looking for, and we'll ask questions. All right, you've got this laundry list of things you're expecting from somebody. What are you most likely to relax on? What are your top 3 priorities? And focusing on those, and it's where it's like, all right, this person's got 80, 85% of what you're looking for, but they're a little light on experience. But I know them. I know that they're a good fit for your culture. They've got passion for what it is that you're doing. I've talked specifically about this position with them, and they're very interested in learning more. If you apply online and you've got 1 year too little of experience for a position as it's stated, you're going to get discriminated against for lack of experience when you could be the right person. It's not really discrimination at that point, but at the same time you're falling into the problem of being a good candidate for a position, but keyword searches for automated recruiting, or even somebody who's internal who is like, all right, I know that I got to find somebody 3 to 5 years experience. 6 years maybe okay. 2 years, sorry, not enough. I mean, when you're working with a recruiter where we're talking directly with a hiring manager, we're going to be able to sing your praises, talk about your strengths that might be a little bit outside of what they're looking for in the position, but it could be a great fit for you. So I guess that's taking a little of a tangent. I run on tangents. I'm apologizing for that too late, but I'd rather provide too much information rather than too little. Did that answer what you're looking for? Okay. Hey, sorry.
Now, you've been talking about automation a lot when you refer to the internet job search. As a programmer, as someone who likes automating things, what's really stopping me from saying, okay, well, I'm going to figure out what the optimization is for making my resume appear very good in some algorithm that is going through my resume, and then creating some API that reads a website, just spits out modular phrases into a resume that it will submit to that website, autonomously, and I'm hitting 5,000 jobs a day all over the United States, and they're just going to have all of the text that the algorithm's going to like.
You're going to DDoS job engines? Yeah. So, I mean, if with that, I mean, you can certainly build a resume that looks fantastic for positions. I've placed people that work here on visas that have had their resumes doctored by the people who represent them. So I'll end up talking to them on the phone and like, oh, you really don't know this technology. You really haven't worked with this. I mean, so you can put those things on your resume, but come to a single phone conversation, if you fall flat there, what was the point in all that effort, sending out all those resumes for a position you don't actually have the experience for? You might get a call. You might be able to generate interest based on understanding what it is that the human on the other side of the system wants, and the the application tracking system, what keywords are going to be highlighted for an application, but it's only going to get you so far. And then if you apply to 5,000 positions and you get 2,500 callbacks because your algorithm was fantastic. I mean, I was asked to do 300 phone calls in a week. I don't know how you're going to do 2,500. I mean, I understand your logic, but I guess I would push it back on you is, why aren't you doing that? And if you were doing that, how and when do you think you would succeed with that? I mean, how do you if you were a hiring manager looking to hire somebody for a position, if you got that many applications, like if everybody was doing that, it would then become a process of, all right, now I've got all these resumes, which you guys are reasonably going to be competing against people that are applying for positions just through websites, and they're going to get a lot of resumes. They're going to have to pick and choose somehow. And when a human actually gets the resumes, the method that they use to analyze them, reading a resume top to bottom, bottom to top, focusing more on education because a particular person really believes on it, or focusing more on experience and what you have on GitHub, all these different things. You can get through the initial gate, the initial hurdle of having your resume being passed on to a person to view it. But then you've got to be able to figure out that interaction, what the company is looking for, and that's more than what a job description says. So it can only get you so far. Sorry, that probably went on too long for that.
So that brings up a really good point then. Rather than going through that process, how do we find out who the hiring manager is in a company? I won't be able to talk to you for my entry-level position, most likely. So how can I go and figure and reverse engineer that? How have you seen candidates do that successfully?
And that's something I would really encourage you to do. So one good way to do that is networking in general, be that LinkedIn or meetups, finding people that do work for that company and asking them more about it. Maybe you can get an informational interview, take them out for coffee, and talk to somebody who works there, or you can sleuth on LinkedIn. Not everybody has that updated, but you can find people, connect with them that way. And hiring managers, they'll say manager often in their title for a position, so you can see if people update their LinkedIn, who is at that company. You might not know who's reviewing resumes or who's the specific hiring manager, depending on the company. Some companies, have a lot of people managing, so you don't know exactly who the person is, but try one by one. If there's a company that you really want to work for, I mean, sometimes if it's a public company, they're going to put lots of paperwork out there. That's more so with financial stuff, but there's lots of information you can find. I mean, LinkedIn's where I would go first and foremost because that's going to be easiest, but there are also other ways to find it. If there's news posted up on a company's blog about a different person being part of a different initiative, there are lots of different ancillary ways you can find that out, but LinkedIn is a more direct way, albeit it's not an answer to everything.
Addressing that, some things, someone was talking about that, and apparently a good way is to, if you can get to the front desk, the secretary can be pretty knowledgeable about that kind of thing. So if you can either go in or phone them and ask just the secretary, that's apparently a way.
Yeah, it can work. I mean, somebody who's had to do cold calling in a prior life, sometimes that gatekeeper is trained not to give you any information unless they know exactly who you are. But new people come into those roles too. People make mistakes, and that's certainly a worthwhile effort to try. No, it's funny sometimes the information that people will offer up that they shouldn't. That's another topic for another day. Yes.
With the understanding that your type of agency typically places those at mid to senior levels, do we need to wait to establish a relationship with your agency, or is there anything as junior levels that can be gained from plugging into your organization now?
Sure. Well, so going back to multiple resumes, multiple people applying, people that I can't necessarily place in the short term, I want to build relationships with everyone. I just only have so much time because there are other expectations I have for my job. I mean, I love talking like this. I love coaching people, helping people understand things better. That's a passion for me that goes outside of what I do, but also interfaces what I do for a job. So I'm happy to connect with people on LinkedIn, give you tips, talk with you at networking events. But of course, I'm ideally chasing somebody that is for a position right now or in the shorter term, but I want to be able to help, give you advice, answer questions for you. If if we connect on LinkedIn, if you want to ask if I know somebody at a particular company, if I know a hiring manager that might be good for you to talk to, I'm happy to point you in their direction. I mean, I'm born and raised here. I know people from work as well as personally, so I try to keep my feelers out as much as I can. Every now and again, I'll hear about internship opportunities that are a good fit for people that, I'm not going to be able to place somebody there, but I might be able to direct them that way. It was really funny. There was somebody that I had met at a networking event, and I told her about a gentleman. His name is Bracken Mossbacker. He works at Luallin Learning, and he has a small team, but he's very passionate about doing internships. So he takes people on internships. And it was within a couple of weeks. She went through Epicotus, and they work specifically with Epicotus as well, but she ended up getting an internship with him. So it was almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It was crazy how it worked out. But I'm happy to connect people. I'm happy to give you tips. It's just that unless I have a more entry or junior level position that a company's like, hey, can you help us with this one? I might not have something for you. But there are exceptions to that. And then with regards to this slide, no real words on it, nothing additional. This was meant to be more of a conversation starter. How do you make my job easier? Like how do you make a recruiter's job in general, whether internal or external? Have a well-defined goal. When you're talking with a recruiter, know what you're looking for. If you have a couple of different positions that you're considering, be able to speak to those. But when you say, oh, I just want a programming job, that's going to make it a lot more challenging for me to find something that you're passionate about and to talk to a hiring manager. Of course, I'll have more conversations just that one about a position if there's a potential fit. But know what it is that you're looking for. Have a few ideas of, gosh, I'd really like to work for a company like this or a position like this or a smaller team, larger company, and have those ideas kind of fleshed out a little bit. And regarding your resume, PDFs look fantastic, but when we send, as a recruiter, an external recruiter, send a resume out to one of our clients, we have a template that we use. We cut out your contact information. We essentially copy and paste your information onto a cover letter, appended on the additional pages. It's really hard to do with PDFs. The formatting gets all askew going from PDF to Word. Just send a text-based resume if you're working with a recruiter. It's going to save a couple of emails, and we'll be able to work more quickly. Yes. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. storage on the internet on my Office 365 account. I got plenty of room in it. As long as I have that Word document resume, I'm good to go. If somebody is more like on the creative side, like a graphic designer, or really front end heavy, and their resume looks fantastic as a PDF, I'm probably just going to send that one because it's going to tell more about the candidate. So that's a little bit different. I don't as often come up in that situation though. You had a question?
Do you ever just pull data off of LinkedIn, use that to build your resume?
I have. I certainly have. Somebody that's in a full-time position, that's in the middle of a release cycle, that's very busy. Like, I can't get your resume. Can you use my LinkedIn? A lot of people will keep their LinkedIn and their resume pretty close, so that can work. And I have no problem adjusting things a little bit, but the less time that I can spend printing up somebody's resume, it's more quick that I'll be able to get it on, or more time I'll have to talk to them about an opportunity and why they could be a good fit that I can then communicate on to potentially their next boss. And then one thing that I tell almost everyone to do when I'm working with them with interviews, unless they just kind of keep me at arm's length regarding interview preparation and help, is maintain a list of accomplishments, achievements, commendations that you've received from peers, from managers, or any projects in general that you're really proud of. Just keep a list, maintain a list, so when you're on a phone interview, or even when you're in an in-person interview, if they ask you a question that relates to something you've done, you've got a story, you've got facts, you've got figures that you can reference to tell them, instead of just giving them a theoretical answer of how you would solve something. Talk about something you've done and expand on it. When they ask you a question, they're giving you the floor. You certainly want to answer the question that somebody's asking, but having that preset list of things that you can go to is going to make you feel more confident, and you can rehearse these stories with friends if you want to do practice interviews, practice technical questions. That's covered on later slides as well. But if you maintain a list of things that you're really proud of, how much easier is it going to be to remember that and not get to an interview like, oh gosh, there's that one project that I worked on, or I spent that weekend learning Node.js, or anything in general that you can highlight. It makes it so much easier to tell a story when you're in an interview, and also you want to practice those as much as you can. And just with regards to interviews, the 5 Ps, I learned that from recruiting, is proper planning prevents poor performance. You want to make sure to treat any interview very seriously, even if it's just an informational interview or like a cultural, interpersonal style interview. The strengths and weakness question, you should have that one down. There's so many basic questions that you can and will be asked. You should have an answer to those ready. It just makes it so much easier when you have a good idea for what you want to say. The question might come across a little differently than you're expecting. You might have to ad-lib a little bit, but having that information ready, you need to do it.
So as junior developers, we might not necessarily be ready for our resume to be used by a recruiter to be sent off to our perfect job, because we're not necessarily ready for our perfect jobs yet. But we should be building these networks so that we then have you all as a resource in the network, because our career is going to be ongoing. It's not always going to be that first job.
So,
Right?
yes. And one caveat, one thing I didn't say before, that and you're helping me answer the previous question better. You should work with multiple recruiters as well. Coming from a recruiter, if you're not working with 2 or 3 recruiters when it's time for you working with a recruiter, you're going to miss out on opportunities, and you're going to sell yourself short. The metric that it was told to me is about a 10% hit rate. Like, a recruiter sends 10 resumes out to a hiring manager, 1 in 10 is going to get a job. That's been a common metric. So if you work with multiple recruiters, it's not going to linearly increase those odds, but you're going to have much better odds of getting a job quicker, getting a job you like, potentially multiple offers when push comes to shove. And that's the situation you want when you have multiple companies competing for you. Makes it harder for me, but I'm used to it. So I mentioned that second point, know your goal. And when you come to an interview and there's a question, oh gosh, I don't have anything on my list, I don't know exactly how I want to answer this, break the silence and say, that's a great question, something along those lines. Respond initially, even if you're not giving a real answer, but it just really keeps the tone of the interview a little bit lighter, and it gives you a little bit of a pause where you can think about something without just looking like you have a blank look on your face. Yeah, strengths and weakness. Yeah, I mentioned that one. And kind of harkening back this bottom line with regards to discrimination, it does still happen. I mean, I've had to push back in times working with companies where they say, "Oh, I really want somebody who's a new grad. Like that's all I'm looking for. I'm not going to look at anybody with more experience." I'm like, "Yeah, can't really do that. If you're only going to be looking that way, it can't help you." When I was between summers of college, I worked for a staffing agency, like as an admin. So I worked for a staffing agency before that, and there was a client that was looking for receptionists that only wanted blonde females. Like that does happen. Things like that happen. So I mean, when it comes to questions in an interview, you can't be asked about your age. You don't have to offer your gender, a bunch of different things you don't have to give answers to. But people will still ask questions that are against the law. If a company is going to ask you a question that you're not comfortable answering and you don't have to answer, might not be a place you want to have a job. And then with regards to you asking questions, because every interview is a two-way street. I mean, there are a lot of different types of questions you can ask to stand out, to be more memorable. So this is one area where I really like to help people when they have a question that they want to ask, but they're not sure about the phrasing. You can change questions to sound more positive, to get a hiring manager to think about you more positively. One of my favorite questions is, what can I do in the first 60 days to exceed expectations in this role? So that person you've asked the question to is thinking, all right, so Nick's working here, he's exceeding expectations, what is he doing? So you're kind of setting the stage for them to think about you being in that position. You'll want to ask about the next steps at the end of an interview. You could, instead of saying, oh, when can I expect to hear back from you, ask a question more like, when can you envision me starting in this role? I mean, it's very aggressive to do something like that, but it also kind of puts that person in that frame of mind of thinking of you being in that position. And then there are all sorts of questions. I feel like I don't need to read these all out, but again, these are available from before, and I can make them available to you more easily. Post-interview, I mean, I kind of talked about that, when can you envision me starting this role? But one thing that one of my partners, Jackie, always encourages people to do is if they're going for an in-person interview, have a thank you note ready ahead of time. If you know the names of the people that you're going to be interviewing with, fill out as much as you can in a personalized thank you note, and then fill in any other details, an additional line at the end to highlight something from the conversation, or if you don't know who you're going to be meeting with, leave the name field blank. Fill it out, put it in an envelope, and give it to the receptionist on your way out. If you don't want to do that, if that's not your style, send a thank you email that same day. You want to make sure to stay top of mind for the people you interviewed with, and you want them to know that you appreciated their time. It's really going to make a big impact. And kind of going back to following up with recruiters, also after you interview with the position, if they give you a specific timeline, say like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, we've got a lot of people we're interviewing, respect that timeline. If they don't give you a more well-defined timeline, a week's as long as you should wait. A week is as long as you should wait to reach back out. 2 days, 3 days, too short. You want to be close around to that week if they don't give you a more defined timeline. Pitfalls in general with regards to the interviewing process, job search. Oh, question first?
Quick question with the job interviews that you guys are recommending for us. Is the hiring manager going to be speaking to you or to me if it was going to be a job that you are? So am I going to be hearing back to the hiring manager, or am I going to be hearing back to
Gotcha.
you?
So there's some things I just didn't want to put on the slides. So let me just kind of line out start to finish what it would be like working with a recruiter on a position. So we would meet in some venue. I'd stalk you on LinkedIn. Yeah, I'll use words like that. Meet a networking event. You'd be a referral. Somehow we meet, find you that you're going to be potentially a good fit for a position. You're interested in the company. We talk about it, talk about your strengths. I build a profile with my notes on why I think you're a really good fit. Communicate that with you. I'll write a write-up. I'll share that with my account managers as well as your resume, and they'll forward on your resume in our format with our cover page, the way that is very standard through the industry, and they'll also get that summary that I send that'll talk about your technical skills that I see, what might not be as clear on a resume. We'll try to hammer out as much of those as possible, but if there's something additional that's valuable, I'll write that in an email both technically and non-technically. So if it's a smaller team, you're a very collaborative person, you're very inquisitive, you're very helpful to the point of answering questions for people that, gosh, that's really good for that team. The hiring manager said they want that. I'll communicate that to them. And if we get the go-ahead to set you up for a first-round interview, sometimes that's meeting for coffee. Sometimes that's a phone interview. Sometimes that's meeting with multiple people. Sometimes it's technical. Sometimes it's more interpersonal and cultural. But at that point, you're talking directly with the hiring manager or somebody from their team that they would recommend. And if you have any questions outside of what I'm explaining, feel free to ask that immediately following. But so then you'll go from that stage to potentially another interview. Sometimes that's in person, sometimes not. We at IT Motives will walk people to their first in-person interview, so meet you beforehand, then walk you to the company. So we'll pass you off to either the receptionist or direct hiring manager, so you're comfortable, you know where you're supposed to be, and it's so much easier. Everybody's nervous going to an interview. If you can eliminate a few things that somebody's nervous about, not knowing where the right place is to be, makes all the difference in the world. We're not the only company that does that, but that's something I think is really important. And we'll work you through all of the interview steps and help you with negotiation. I mean, we know beforehand what it is you're looking for in terms of salary, or if it's contract to hire role in terms of like hourly pay that you would need. And we're targeting positions that are going to be very close to what you're looking for. So by the time it gets to negotiation, there often isn't a lot of push, back and forth with regards to compensation, but we'll want to make sure that the money's right. And if it is, you'll accept it and then start. So that was kind of trying to describe how it is we work. I mean, nothing as earth-shattering in that, but does that answer your question, or is there something missing that I didn't cover?
No, I think it did. Yeah. I just want to know how in-depthly involved you were with the relationship with the hiring manager and then our relationship, which was.
Sometimes we'll sit on the phone. Sometimes we'll sit in person. I haven't done that personally in my last year with IT Motives. I have done that in the past. There was a company where I had 3 back-to-back interviews, and I sat in on all of them to see how the different people were doing in the interviews, the questions that were being asked. They did one person got an offer at the end of the day, but that's something that is common in the industry. People will do that to get a better feel for the questions that the hiring manager is asking or the team is asking in general, but it's not something that I've done extensively, at least in the last 2 years. Okay. Post-interview, talked about that. Pitfalls. The question or the statements that I hate most are, I'm a really quick learner, and I'm a hard worker. So many people say that without substantiating it. If you say that with a recruiter that's not invested in that conversation and you don't follow up with a reason why you're a quick learner or hard worker and a situation, they're going to lose interest, and they might not be wanting to send you to a position if you're just saying, oh yeah, I'm a really hard worker, and that's all you say. I mean, it's great that if you are, but if you can't tell somebody why, then it's not even worth saying. And then kind of going back to building resumes you'd send automatically. If you list skills in the body of your, list skills in the keyword, the technical skills section that aren't in the body of your resume, it's like, all right, you've worked with this technology, where? Like, it doesn't make sense, and it's going to throw somebody off who's reading your resume. Or a resume that's focused too heavily on unrelated work and education. It's a waste of space. My biggest enemy when it comes to resumes is wasted space. Like blank white space. If you have like your title and dates like in a column on the left and then the body of your experience on the right, and you've just got this huge pocket of white space, that's wasted real estate. And if you can't explain why you want to work at a company, that's going back to the planning. You got to be able to tell somebody who's interviewing you why you want to be at that company in that role. Inappropriate behavior and attire. I mean, that's mostly self-explanatory. I've still, seen people do well in jobs and get offers that showed up in slacks, a nice button-up, and tennis shoes with white socks. It's not going to throw people off. I got somebody an offer in the last month who showed up with jeans I wouldn't have considered interview appropriate, nice shoes, nice belt, and a thin black V-neck shirt with holes in it. He still got the offer. So, I mean, there are situations that just don't apply to the traditional logic with regards to interviews and what you expect. Oh, I've got to be in business attire or a suit. That's not always the Portland way. And then failing to send a thank you, you got to send a thank you. Additional inappropriate. I don't know how well you guys can read these. Maybe I should read some of those. But breath mints better than gum. You don't want to be chewing gum in an interview. That throws people off. I've actually had somebody in the last 6 months that the hiring manager mentioned that he was chewing gum the entire time and smacking his lips. When you're talking about previous work or previous experience, previous projects, don't knock people down. Don't throw your former coworkers or former boss under the bus. The person that interviews them, like, all right, so when they move on from a position here, that's what they're going to be saying about us in the market. Maybe I don't want to hire that person. And then own your mistakes. If there's something that you didn't do right, if you came across a hurdle in a project, you didn't do something well, and it comes up, be ready to own that. I mean, the same way with strengths and weaknesses, having an answer for that, if you can actively accept your mistakes, things that you've done wrong, you display coachability as a strength. I'm willing to look introspectively. I'm willing to see what my problems are and move past those. There is strength in that. I always say you can find a strength in any weakness, and you should. That's what what are your strengths and weaknesses? That's what that question is based on, is can you see something positive in your mistakes, and can you admit where you have shortcomings? And gosh, did I rifle through that? We're about 48 minutes in here. So I have lots of crowdsourced Q&A questions that I've come across through Slack and other mediums. But if there's a specific question that you've been asked in interviews in the past, or any questions at all, this is free for all for questions.
So, I recently subscribed to LinkedIn Premium. They give you something called InMails, which allow you to reach out to recruiters directly or hiring managers at companies, and it's been okay. But I'm curious, what, from a recruiter's perspective, are InMails specifically, not the premium experience, because I don't actually think it's that great, worth it for you? Do you respond to them? Do you see them? Are they something that I should invest in, or is this something that you don't think necessarily is that?
I think we can have somewhat of a shared experience here in terms of how you use LinkedIn and how I use LinkedIn. So I have a premium account, but for me, that's so I can search more people. I have InMails. I have excess InMails. I don't get that good of a response from InMails. I have a lot of beef with LinkedIn on a lot of things. They've changed over the years. And InMails they used to be more valuable than they are. If there's somebody that you can't send a message to that is a hiring manager using an InMail, that's a worthwhile endeavor to try that, but you shouldn't consider it one of your top 3 methods to find someone. In terms of an InMail. I mean, not everybody even checks them. It's not the best system in my opinion. And I'm happy to go through Q&A questions here. I know that you talk longer than 20 minutes as a person in front of a group of people, you're going to lose people's interest very quickly. I was at the PDX Node meetup last night. Jeremy Foster, Microsoft engineer, works with Node, fantastic presenter. He was warned by the people at the beginning. He was like, you talk longer than 35 minutes, you're going to lose people. And this is somebody that he gives presentations. This is my 3rd time giving a presentation like this. So I really do appreciate you guys, I guess, entertaining me by having me here, welcoming me here, listening to what I have to say. Would you find it valuable for me to go through questions that have been submitted to me that people have about recruiters, that maybe pick a few that would be valuable? Or would you prefer to save questions for outside of this?
I've got one more, actually.
Yeah.
How do you, so you mentioned there are some recruiting agencies that do focus more on entry level. Probably not as many, but there probably are some mid to entry level. If so, where do you find, how do you find out which recruiting agencies to work for? There's no Glassdoor for recruiters. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on, for us, kind of figuring out where we should go, especially down the line, not necessarily right now. But
so in the short term, this isn't exact, but I would say that larger companies than mine that do more contract-based business are going to see more entry-level positions. It's a very high-volume business, trying to work with a lot of clients, a lot of people across the country, so they will work with companies that need somebody. They need somebody for a project, 3 months, 6 months, a year, and they just don't have the time and the resources internally to source somebody who's maybe a little more junior that they can mold, show the ropes, and get them off and running. So you might find more opportunities at the entry or junior level with some of the larger companies like the one that I came from. So that's, I mean, you've got, I hate saying this, but you got, like Tech Systems, Modus, that office that I used to work for has changed a little bit. I don't know how many people they have working in the office right now. But the bigger companies in general, I guess, I don't know if Vanderhound would be quite a bit large enough, but like the national and international recruiting companies just in general, you might find more opportunities there that would be a good fit. But again, not a catch-all, and that's just kind of a nature of what clients are looking for, what kind of clients they talk to, and that whole dynamic that I've been privy to see. Yes.
So I found networking is most effective, especially with like companies that are local, because you're closer to that area. Do you have any like tips or ideas on when it comes to applying to places you're looking to out of state?
Well, one, it's tough. If you have been in the town or know somebody that works there and you have the ability to take a trip, that's going to set you apart. But in general, trying to find somebody within that company that you can talk to, whether that be LinkedIn or other forums, somebody commits or contributes to open source software, or via Twitter, you're able to find people that work at this company that you can talk to. Hey, what's it like working there? Can I have 5, 10, 15 minutes of your time to learn a little more about the company? And pick their brain, because they're going to know a lot more about the recruiting and hiring processes, how they were brought in. It's really tough just in general to land a position when you're not in a particular location. Like if you can't go face to face, there are a lot of hurdles you come across. So somebody you can talk to that's outside of the specific focus on hiring, that's not looking at resumes, if you can talk to somebody else and get their point of view and maybe get to know somebody through the course of time networking, you help them with something else, they'll pay you a favor, you curry favor with somebody, find an internal champion somehow, that's going to give you better luck. Or if you ideally knew somebody who worked at that company, that's going to make it a lot easier, like from prior work experiences, education, otherwise. Kind of blabbed on that because it's hard. It's tough to do. Yes?
You mentioned working with multiple recruiters. I know in the past I had an experience with a recruiter who really wanted to be exclusive. I don't know if you could speak to that issue.
Absolutely. So for me, again, mentioning that I would prefer, I think it's best for people to work with multiple recruiters. I would love to be seen as a preferred recruiter. I would never ask somebody to only work with me. There's a caveat. If it's a specific company and a specific opportunity, sometimes you have to sign an exclusivity agreement to be considered for a position. That will be the hiring company's mandate in some cases. Like with US Bank, I had to get a wet signature for everybody that I sent for opportunities there because they work with so many agencies. Sometimes people are ringing these software engineers' phones off the hook, talk to them about a position they sound interested in. They might not tell them all the details, and you'll have resumes coming from multiple agencies for one person for one position. But besides that, if somebody says, only work with me, sign an exclusive to only work with me, have they earned your trust before asking that? I mean, you should only be working with people that you trust, and if they're asking just to work with you, what's their motivation for that? It's self-interested. It's not in your best interest in most cases. Yes?
What happens when, if you've applied for a job at a company and there's like a cross that say we used you as a recruiter too? What would happen if you were two places going to the same company? What happens when that happens?
So the question, just to restate it, I should have been doing that earlier, but essentially if two recruiting companies send your resume to one company, what happens?
Or if you went direct to the company.
Or if you went direct. So in a case where two recruiting companies both send a person to a company, it can be dealt with a couple of ways. Sometimes it can be considered a double submittal is one way of phrasing it, and the company will just outright not consider that person for some window of time. So that's worst case scenario. So if a recruiting company is not forthcoming, sends your resume off without your permission, that can really bite you. If you apply on your own first, and then a recruiting company comes in, the hiring manager is going to tell the recruiter to pound sand, like get out of here. We've already got this person's resume in our system. We're going with them direct.
would they check it in that case? They would check it to see if it was in their database
Oh,
already?
absolutely. They have financial incentive to do it. If they get somebody's resume, get access to a person before a recruiting company comes in, they're not going to want to pay the fee. I mean, there are situations it's not even worth going into that could be outside of that. Like if we have a really trusted relationship with a company that wants to work with a recruiter to streamline their process, they might be like, all right, just go with them. They know what this is like. They're going to make everybody's lives easier. Or in the case where there might be a retainer, for instance, on a position, that can be different. So where a company would specifically give money to a recruitment agency to focus efforts until that position is filled or for a certain period of time, they might want all people to go through that recruiting agency just to streamline the processes. Yes?
Are there advantages or disadvantages to applying to a company again after being denied once over a period of time, of course?
Well, it depends if you figure out why you weren't considered. If something has changed about your experience, changed about your resume, yeah, keep applying. But sending the same resume or like applying to the same position multiple times over the course of like 6 weeks, 2 months, it's probably the same position. They probably already reviewed your resume. You might be flagged as passed, so you might be just going further into that black hole. But yeah, if you can get insight, again, sleuthing, contacting somebody internally in the company, maybe they can check on your application status. If you find the right person, you'd want to know a little bit more as to why. But finding one opening, applying for it multiple times is usually not going to net you anything.
Going off of his question regarding flagging, I've heard that companies sometimes do talk to each other, or maybe they both use the same system, and if someone is doing something, for example, spamming 5,000 resumes to a bunch of different companies, is there a red flag for your resume? Can your resume be red flagged at multiple places? Have you heard any of that before?
So companies use separate systems for like ATS, their applicant tracking system. There are a bunch of different ones you apply through online. So company A, like a software company, not a recruiting company, but company A, company B, they're not going to have systems that talk to one another. But Portland's a small town. There are recruiting conferences you can go to in Portland for people that are all internal recruiters. Internal, external recruiters, sometimes they go back and forth, and we do talk to each other. If we have a company that, oh gosh, I would never work with them. If you've got a buddy who works for a different company, like, dude, don't work with Xylon 12. Like, they are horrible. They don't give you feedback, and they treat their employees bad. Word will get around. If you apply and you lie, like on your application, you lie during the interview process, or you do something that is inappropriate, that can get around. The same way as if a recruiter behaves improperly or doesn't get back to you or lies to you about something, that can get around. And a recruiter's, why am I losing this term? What people think of recruiters, people's opinions of recruiters, it's gold to a recruiter. So many of the people that I've sent off to positions in the last several months have been referrals. Like, I wouldn't say majority, but a lot of the people that I've sent on for positions have been referred to me. And if you treat people bad, they don't send you referrals. So it works. Portland is still a small town, so word does get around. Just not directly from like an applicant tracking system. Within a company, yes. Outside of a company, no. Any additional questions? I wish I would have brought stickers or something cool. All I've got are a stack of cards. But my Twitter handle is at Nick Luallin. You can reach me with questions there. Email me. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Another question though?
Yeah, do you have a feeling of just what technologies are like growing versus waning in popularity, or what you're getting asked for? Are there clear trends and that sort of thing?
Problem for me this time of the year is I see fewer positions, fewer new openings around the holidays. At the weeks leading up to Thanksgiving through early into the new year, I see fewer positions. But JavaScript in general, be it Node or I was really happy to see at the talk we went to last night, PDX Node. There was a tool you can use to analyze different technologies, how often they're asked about on Stack Overflow. And so Angular 1 was put up there, Angular 2, React, Node, jQuery, all these different things were put up there. Surprisingly high number of inquiries about Angular 2. It's really popular. React is still very popular in terms of JavaScript specifically. Node, I mean, with the recent announcement that IBM, Microsoft, and at least one other company are going to be putting a lot of effort into the Node project. I mean, that gets my notice as a recruiter for people need to be learning this or understanding this, because it's going to be needed in different applications. But it's sometimes hard for me to say. I mean, your standard C#, .NET, Java that I see a lot of in this area, there's still going to continue to be demand for that. But in terms of new demand, I mean, JavaScript, big data technologies in general, NoSQL databases, those kinds of things, if you have familiarity in, different positions will require that. And those are things that I continue to see that are hot. And JavaScript in general, big data, NoSQL. I mean, it's a moving target too. Things are constantly changing. I mean, I literally had to ask this question to my CEO. It's like, all right, we don't have as many positions right now. What kind of people do you want me to be talking to? What kind of technologies do you want me to keep an eye out for? Because the same way that you guys do, I've got to keep an eye on that. But it's hard to know sometimes. It's hard to predict a market as somebody who studied economics. But again, thank you all so very much. I'm very open to follow-up questions. Please do connect with me. If there's a company that you're interested in that has an open position that you've applied to or thinking of applying to, I'm happy to give you insight if I have any. But again, it's not the recruiters don't want to help you. It's just we don't get as many positions that are going to be the best fit for you initially. Yes.
So sort of similar with this being the slow time is right after the new year, one of the boom times when people have figured out, or is there a boom time, like a good time to be a job applicant?
I would have liked to think that it was more cyclical than what I've seen, but it comes in waves. Like we were expecting a lot more positions leading into the summer and coming out of the summer that we've seen. So there's been no definitive pattern for me. Of course, the economy is continually changing. In economics, when you have all these different models that you look at, the stock market is called a random walk. That's how you describe it. So that kind of mirrors very closely being random with what we see in the job market. But there are slowdowns around the holidays because people are on trips with their families, and hiring just slows down when people are in the office.
Do you have an idea of when it picks back up, like what a norm is, if there is one?
Anywhere from the first or second week of January to the first or second week of February. Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Nick.
Yeah,
Good job.
no problem.
Yeah, you answered a lot of questions.
Hey, I try.
Yeah.
So what's your day looking like? You busy?
Well, I was out late tonight, and we actually just changed recently from being salaried to hourly. So I'm not supposed to do overtime. So my wife is sick. I'm going to be taking care of her this afternoon.
Oh, good, good,
I guess
good,
starting probably a little over an hour. I do have one phone call after that.
Good.
How about yourself?
I'll be here till 9 o'clock tonight.
Nice.
Yeah.
Just trying to log out here real quick.
Looks like you've got
Some follow-up questions, perhaps.
some bullshit.
Nick, thank you.
Awesome.
Sounds good. We'll
Yeah.
talk.
Definitely.
There's one
Brandon, good. Yeah, you're welcome.
See ya.
Hi. Yuchin.
Yuchin,
Yes.
nice to meet you beyond a question from afar.
Yeah. Did you take behavioral economics with Will Harbaugh?
I did. Behavioral, experimental, and theoretical economics,
I
yes.
took that exact course. I graduated from Yale with the econ major as well. Actually.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Like the jacket. Didn't notice that before.
So it's kind of hard to notice. It's subtle. So.
Yeah, it's a little muted.
Yeah, actually, I was thinking about. So I'm personally trying to combine tech and the econ degree I got into, like kind of the business analyst, data science kind of field. And the big problem I'm having is that it's a very technical field, and on top of that, it's also very ambiguous. There's a lot of resources.
It's continually changing.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to figure this all out. As I'm going along, I'm trying to just go in a general direction and then try and pick up as much as I can, and I'm gonna hopefully start applying to those positions pretty soon. But I was wondering if you had any insights or thoughts that you've noticed from people who are applying to these jobs?
I just placed my first person ever in a data scientist role.
Really?
He's got a PhD. It was a perfect storm of an opportunity for him. But I see people from so many different backgrounds go into data science. Like people that have studied biology, chemistry, different disciplines come into data science. They use Stata, R, all these different analytical tools that can be applied in the business world. We've got all this data. How do we choose through this? What actionable business decisions can we make? So I think that there's an R group. There's a data science group. So going to networking events, you'll be able to talk to some people that are working and looking to get into these positions, what they're doing.
Mhm.
That's another moving target in terms of when and how are people hiring data science roles. I don't see a lot of them, but I hear a lot of hiring in data science roles, and